Pranam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bhed Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastu Andhakaro Vai Rukarastu Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambujanmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane. So last week we started the 12th chapter of the second of the 5 chapters that talked about Brahmananda. So what we saw in the last class was a week ago that the 11th chapter talked about Yogananda, the method of calming your mind down and to put some vichara into it, some viveka into it, to grasp the fact that you alone are the source of your joy. It appears to come from other places, but you in fact are the source of it. This is what we need to grasp and accomplish. This is a fact. It's already a done deal. It's not something that you have to fight about. You don't have to be doubting about it. All the Mahatmas say this is the fact. So stop beating about the bush. Now just try to see why is it that we don't really understand it. So Swami Akhandananda in the manner of pointing this out was saying that in the minds of everyone who is a human being, lurking behind our lives, there are 3 questions. Okay? The 3 questions are, which is common to all of us, whether we articulate it, whether we pursue it, whether we do something about it, whether we discuss it, that's a separate matter. But very naturally, every human being, no matter where you are, what part of the world you are, has these 3 questions. Those are, what is this world all about? What is the nature of it? What makes it work? What doesn't it? What makes it not work? What is the world? This is question number 1. What is it made out of? What happens to it? The second one is, who am I? Because I am not, of course I am part of the world, but very distinctly I am the one who is the knower of the world. So there is a certain understanding in our mind that I am different from the world because I am the knower of the world. Who am I that is the knower of the world? And so who am I means it has a lot of detail buried under it. My past, my history, my linealogy, where am I going, what happens to me after my death, do I have a death, all those kinds of questions relating to me. This is question number 2 that everybody has. The third question is there someone who designed this, who is the creator of this? Is there a person? Who is God, in other words? So these are the three questions. Okay? So, with those three questions, Swami Akhandananda points out that if you look at the so-called scientists, by the way, all three questions are adopted by some very smart people. Ordinary person cannot really go into the details and the depth of answering any one of these three questions. You need to be very bright, you need to be inquisitive, you need to be persistent. There's a lot of accomplishment of all of this. So if you look at the first question, the answer to the first question, which is what is this world about, then you find that there are people who are involved in understanding what this world makes, what is it made out of. And so particle physics, quantum mechanics, not just ordinary physics, what temperature the water boils, those are ordinary physics, high school. But going into the details of what is the very origin of the world and so on. So, in answering these questions, two factors need to be kept in mind. Okay? So, one is called Chaitanya, Chaitana Swarupa, one which is conscious, one who is the nature of awareness. And the other one is Jada. One is Chaitanya and the other one is Jada. Jada means inert. Okay? And so in our normal understanding, we can visualize the difference between Chaitanya and Jada as between electricity and an appliance. An appliance by itself doesn't run, as we know, we have already talked about it many times, but it has to be attuned to the electricity, in which case it glows or makes a sound or puts some heat out or something. It just functions by itself. But the main thing that is done is by the Chaitanya. So even though, the Jada Vastu, the inert Vastu can move. The eyes, for example, they can blink, see, close, you can turn your head left or right, all those kinds of things. But then that is a reflected Chaitanya, not its own Chaitanya. It is reflected. And as we know, what happens is that when the death comes, then the Chaitanya is withdrawn from the Jada and the Jada dies. So it's very clear from that Jada is inert and Chaitanya is something which is conscious. So these are the two factors that the answers to the three questions deal with in trying to come up with an answer. Okay? The scientists, the so-called scientists, answer the question about what is this world with the answer that it is made out of Jada. And in fact, the right combination of Jada creates Chaitanya. So you see an endless discussion about how consciousness is born. Somehow the consciousness is some kind of a quality of the human being. We know we are Jada, it's, that's very obvious, but somehow the quality of the human being makes it conscious. So somehow the consciousness is created out of Jada. This is what the scientists believe. And not only the modern scientists, but even in the ancient world. So if you look at Vaisheshikas and Nyayikas, which are also schools of thought, they are also ancient scientists alone. They also had ideas about Paramanu, the very small particles, and etc. They also had that. Nowadays it's a little bit more evolved, but basically it remains the same. They are looking for to see how these various particles combine together, and that's what makes this world. So these are the scientists. Then you have a second class of people who are bhaktas. Bhaktas means that they are devotionally oriented. They feel that the world is emanated from Ishvara, and what we need to do is to understand Ishvara, and all we need to do is to fall in the feet of Ishvara, to really, believe in God, to be totally faithful to the scriptures that say, yes, there is a God, and I just accept it because it makes me feel good. Not only for this life, the scriptures, they also say that you will be taken care of in your next life also. So that makes it even better. I'm willing to just give up everything else and just do my prayers, upasanas, and also karmaphala, and so this is what it is. So they also feel that in terms of the Jada and Chaitanya, Ishvara is Chaitanya, and from him all these Jadas came out. This is what the very prayerful people who are bhaktas believe in. This is their answer. Then there are Vedantins like us. Vedantins like us. What the Vedantins say is, first of all, Chaitanya did not come from Jada. It never came from anything. It is already there. Number one. And secondly, the so-called Jada is nothing but a adhyaropa. It is a imposition on the Chaitanya, like it is in the case of dream, where in fact the entire dream is nothing but Chaitanya. But in the dream, you can see tables, which is Jada. You can see things that are Jada. So there is a Jada, but it is really a kind of like an imposition of Jada on top of the Chaitanya. So that's all it is. There is no real thing as Jada. This is what we believe in. Okay. So in doing so, now the question is, how do we understand what we are saying, what the Shastra is saying? What is the way for us to really go forward with it? Okay, I kind of, in the beginning, I remember when I also heard Swami Chinmayananji, Swami Dayananji, these kinds of explanations appealed to me. Excuse me. So they give me an idea that this is what I want to really follow. And they also say that this is what one has to follow. Don't try to be a scientist, and don't just be a bhakta, but go into viveka and vichara. So now the question is, how do I do viveka and vichara? What is it that I need to do? So this is what Pancadasi is all about. So there we say, we'll get that in more detail later on, but for the time being, just to position you in terms of where we are in chapter 12. I'll briefly describe the method of doing vichara and viveka. And so what the Shastra says is, the Vedantins say is, that you are mistaken in the way you take this world to be. You're mistaken in terms of the world, you're mistaken in terms of your own grasping of who you are, and you are mistaken about the God. So there is what's called a adhyasa. Adhyasa, as in the Brahma Sutra, it's called Adhyasa Bhashya, when Adi Shankara talked about the Adhyasa Bhashya. So what it means is an explanation of the erroneous comprehension, wrong comprehension. So this is what is called atasmin tadbuddhi. Tadbuddhi means the conclusion that this is true in a thing which is not what that thing is. Atasmin. Atasmin. So the very clear example of the rope and snake means that you take the rope to be not what it is. This is the nature of adhyasa. So this is very fundamental to Vedanta, and what it really means is that my grasping, my estimation of what world is, who I am, and what God is Brahma. Brahma means it is full of falsehood, not even close to the truth. It's something that you don't understand, and we'll tell you why you don't understand in a minute, but the main thing is, it is a lack of understanding that makes you wander around the world. And so the result of the method of correcting it is to understand what your mistake is. Because you say, okay, first of all, I don't accept that this is a mistake, but if somebody wise comes to me and says, believe me, you may not realize it, but you're making a mistake. Well, at first I don't even, I get, my ego is there and says, what? Me making a mistake? No, I know what I'm doing. But finally, if my ego sort of becomes a little softer, I can say, okay, at least I admit that I've made a mistake, but what mistake have I made? Tell me, what is it that I have to do? So there, then the Shastra goes into great detail about how the mistake is and what needs to be done to correct it. So in terms of this correction of the mistake, again, there are three aspects that I make a mistake on. There are three fundamental truths about ourselves that I am very interested in, I am very committed to, they are very important for me, and in all three areas I make a mistake. Okay? So again, I'm just coming to the preface to the introduction to chapter 12. So just a couple of more steps and then we will go into the specifics of chapter 12. So these are the three areas that I need. There are three aspects of myself, the world, and God where I make mistake. Those three aspects are very important to me. And we've talked about this many times before, but I think it's good to review the basics from time to time to sort of center ourselves on what the basic issues are. First one is, I want to be. I don't not want not to be. How many negatives? I want to be. I don't want to disappear. And even if I accept death, that is only temporary, then I want to come back. Because I can't understand how I can cease to be. That's not, I just cannot accept it. The second thing is that not only I want to be, but I want to be alive to know that I am. You know, there's a relative of mine whose mother was kept in coma in Mumbai for 2 years. And all her daughters, there are 3 daughters, they were all never in agreement to pull the plug. And the doctors had said there is 0 chance that your mother will be out of coma. She has to be completely, she is in coma and she is not going to come out before she dies. She was quite old at that time. But the children didn't want to pull the plug. So there was, if you were to ask this woman, is it okay if you are, but you don't know it? And I think with the answer that all of us would give, if we ever have a chance to ask somebody who is almost ready to enter coma, or maybe briefly comes out of it perhaps, they'll all say no. If I'm not alive, if I'm not aware that I am, then what is the use of my being there? So this is my second desire in my life, is that first of all I want to be. Secondly, I want to be aware that I am. So Ishvara says, okay, anything else? Is that okay? That's not all you want? And if somebody says all these are the only 2, then why forgetting something? Suppose you are, and you are aware that you are, and your awareness says, I am not happy. I am in complete misery. So you are actually not in coma. Coma is better because if you have some aches and pains in your body, the fact that you cannot eat by yourself, I have no idea how the body functions and how the elimination takes place and all of that. I have no idea about these advanced physiological functions. But whatever it is, it's not pleasant. And then you say, okay, all right, granted, you grant the first boon, you are. Second boon, you are aware. And then that's it. You stop. Then you say, oops, I forgot. I also want to be happy. Now my 3 things are complete. I want to be, this is called Sat. I want to be aware, this is called Chit. And I want to be happy, Ananda. Sat, Chit, Anantam. Anantam and Anandam are pretty much the same. Anantam means that there is no limits to it. Unlimited. So in all 3 areas that I'm interested in, I'm making a mistake. And this is where my mistakes have to be corrected. So there is a methodology for correcting the mistake. And so now when we come to the Ananda portion, very briefly let's look at the Sat and the Chit portion. So in the Sat portion, I don't understand yet, I don't know that I am Sat Swarupa, that my nature is I am, independent of time, independent of place, independent of any conditions. And in fact, I lend my Sat Swarupa to things that are dependent on me. My body is dependent on me. So I lend my Sat to the body. And the body has its own characteristics in terms of being an appliance. And that means that the Sat imposed on the body is not unconditional. It becomes conditional. So that truth is actually borrowed from me. And my problem is that I don't know that I am Sat Swarupa, so I just think that I am the Sat of, Sat, borrowed Sat. I am just the body. And so the limits of the body limits me, not knowing. This is Brahma. This is Brahma. Instead of knowing that I am total space, I think I am just the room space which is conditioned by the walls. And if the walls fall down, then I am dead. So this is with respect to the Sat. When it comes to the Chit, same thing. There is a mistake that I make. What is the mistake that I make? Because I take myself to be sometimes knowledgeable, sometimes ignorant, sometimes I don't believe that I am even conscious. A lot of people feel that when you go to sleep, you lose your consciousness. Not true, but the people believe it. A lot of people believe that before you were born, you were not conscious. And a lot of people believe that after death, you are no longer conscious. And so your sense of awareness also is very conditional, just like your body was with respect to Sat. So in terms of the, let me shut this down, sorry. So in terms of the Chit also, I'm making the same kind of mistake. Not knowing that, and how is it that I'm making a mistake? Because these are very important points to really ponder on. We will go into this in more detail sometime. And that is, when you say, I'm ignorant, you say, I'm ignorant, I don't know. When you say, I don't know, and so many times during the day when you have to say, I don't know. I don't know. Now that's ignorance. You take the ignorance to be yourself. Or you can say, yeah, I know that. Yep. I knew that. I know that very well. You know that song? Yes, I know that song very well. I used to hear it a long time ago. In fact, here are the lyrics for it. Or you can say, no, I never heard that song. I don't know. Here's a mistake. You think you are the nature of I don't know. And you are sometimes the nature of that I know. Question is, not the question, but the fact is, you cannot say I don't know unless you know. Isn't it? You cannot even say I don't know unless you are the nature of awareness. This is a very important thing to see. See this fact. So you cannot have Vishesha Jnanam, any particular knowledge, or Vishesha Ajnanam, any particular ignorance, unless you have Samanya Jnanam. This is the Viveka that we have to do with respect to Jnanam, as we have to do the Viveka with respect to Sat. This is what I have to do. It requires Viveka. It doesn't require examining the world like the scientist does. It doesn't require accepting Ishvara as a bhakta. It requires something which is here and now, and I'm making a mistake about it. Correcting that mistake with the help of Viveka and Vichara. Because I have my samskaras. Samskara means my enduring train of thought is that I am just the body. I am ignorant. I am knowledgeable. Sometimes ignorance. This is my samskara. I am so under control of such a samskara that my mind does not even begin to understand that it is not true. There is something much more fundamental to myself. But it's possible to come to that point. So now we have covered a lot of ground. So we have talked about what the Vedantists say about Sat and Chit. Now let us come to Ananda, which is the main topic of these 5 chapters. Okay? Same issue. Exactly the same issue that I had with respect to Sat and Chit also apply to Ananda. This we have to understand. What do you mean by the same issue? That there is a Brahma. There is a mistake about my nature with respect to the source of joy. Not even my nature, with respect to the very nature of joy anywhere. There is a basic mistake. What is that mistake? It is very similar to Sat and Chit. That I am the Sat, I am Ananda Swarupaha. Just like I was Sat Swarupaha, I was Jnana Swarupaha, I am Ananda Swarupaha. Swarupaha means my own nature, not borrowed from anything else, but my own nature is Ananda. And I don't know that. So in all 3 cases there is Brahma. I just don't know it. That's it. Nothing more to it. So if I remove the Brahma, I'm okay. There's nothing more that needs to be done. You don't have to beat the snake up. You don't have to call the animal control people. There is a mistake that you correct and that's done. So in the case of Ananda also, what needs to be done is to understand where I'm making the mistake and then to correct it. This is what needs to be done. So, as we saw in the last class, the student says, look at this Yogananda and all these kinds of logical conclusions that you see the sleep and how you wake up and this, that or the other. I don't know if I can grasp it because I read it a couple of times but I haven't got it. Is there a simpler method? Or even not a simple method, where do I get started? Maybe that's a better way to do that. I think Panchadashikara had given this as the simplicity. Perhaps I would accept it, but I would also say that you'll say, okay, you've given me a lot to think about, but I'm not sure that I can really embark on it. But can you at least give me some beginning steps? This is what the way approach the 12th chapter is. So the 12th chapter says, okay, all right, here's how we begin. Are you ready for it? Let's go into it. This is where we ended in the last class. So today's was just a elaborate commentary on that. So now we will go into some detail about this beginning methods, or if you want to look at it as a simpler method of how I am making this mistake. Because you've already established that I am, my view of the world is mistaken. And so the question is, I kind of accept it, but I'm not clear about how I'm making that mistake. And please tell me, fine, if I do make that mistake, how can I correct that mistake? This is what the whole chapter is all about. Okay. So there is a very fundamental aspect of this, which, we can say this is what is called upakrama upasamhara, shadlinga vichara. So upakrama upasamhara means that in the beginning, if you give a talk on something, you have to tell exactly what the talk subject is in the very beginning. Then you give the talk, and then at the end you say, this is what we talked about. It's called upakrama upasamhara, beginning and summary. Upakrama upasamhara is, you are the very source of ananda. Not only don't you know this, which is agrahanam, but you make a mistake, make it even worse by saying something else is now the source of your ananda, which is called anyatha grahanam. So you have agrahanam, and then because of that you have anyatha grahanam. Agrahanam means that you don't know it, and because of that you mistake something else to be it. This is the central theme in our life. This is what we have to see. Okay? All right. So now we go into various examples. This is how we make the mistakes about things. Okay. So here in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, this is the very famous story which is given in Brihadaranyaka, and I think many of you may already know this, that there was a householder rishi. Here's an example of a householder rishi, one who was a great seer of truth, who has studied a lot and so on, but he also had a functioning household. In fact, he had 2 wives, as the story goes. Not only 1, 2. And their names were Katyayini and Maitreyi. So when he was growing older, he had presided over a very successful household. He was presiding over, I think, some kind of a kingdom and running it quite well and everything. But then it was time for him to take a sannyasa. So he one day called both of his wives and said, listen, from tomorrow I'm leaving you and I'm going to the forest to just doing my meditation. So they all said, what? Why? He says, well, I feel that is what I want to do. So the story goes that Maitrayani, she was also a good person, but she was very worldly. And so the king Yagyavalkya told both of them, I'm going to divide my property into two, and both of you will take half of it, and then you lead your life as best as you want to. So Katyayani had some questions about, how do I do this, how do I do that, but very happy with her new fortune and the independence of managing that fortune, and she said, thank you so much, how wonderful, and so on. Maitreyi was a very wise person. So she talked to him and said, I have a question for you. You are living this very successful life, and no one leaves something unless the new phase is better. And especially you, because I have known you, you're a very intelligent, very wise person. You would not make a mistake, I know. So my question to you is, what is better than this? Why are you doing this? You must find something which is better. I want, and I want that too, because if you think there is something better than this, then I want the same thing. So then starts a very detailed discussion about Vedanta and the truth of life between Yagyavalkya and Maitreyi. He says, okay, now that you are asking, first of all, as you know very well in Brahma Sutram, Athato Brahma Jigyasa, that you cannot teach this unless somebody is interested in asking. Cannot do that, because it will have no effect on the person. So he says, now that all your life you have never really inquired, but now you have, let me tell you what this is all about. So she says, okay, tell me. So one of the first things that he did was to show her that, I don't know if it was the first thing or not, but this is prominently talked about as one of the things that they really talked about, is you are making a mistake about what is the true source of your Ananda. You think it is somewhere else, but in fact it is you. She says, really? How is that possible? I don't get it. So he goes at great length in explaining this, and this is the basis of the verses in chapter 12. In chapter 12, Vidyaranyam gives lots of examples of how this should be approached in your life. And if you approach this in your life and do some viveka and vichara. So here, vichara should not be done independently. Thinking should not be done independently. It should be based on the suggestions from the Shastra as to how to distinguish the real from the apparent. Kind of like, supposing you look for some golden ornament, and if you're just if you are me, I could not tell what is a real gold and what is a fake gold. Because if it looks like a gold, I would say, yeah, this looks like it. But it has to be taught to people to distinguish between real gold and false gold, between just on the surface and the real weight of it and so on. So it has to be taught. The Viveka has to be taught. Then based on that, the Vichara has to be done. Because once, let's say you are a jeweler, and the jeweler teaches some to the students, to his daughters, his sons, this is the way to distinguish real gold. Then you can start testing him. You look at something and you become very adept at it and say, yes, this is real, this is not. So Viveka has to be done along with Vichara. Both of them have to be done. Not just Vichara alone. Because we say that in the case of scientists and so on, they are also very smart Vicharis. But the Viveka is not there. And so they go into wrong conclusion. That there is a Big Bang, the world is based out of strings, all kinds of funny stuff. It isn't. So, Yajnavalkya said this in Maitreyi. Here's the thing, let's get started. He said, look, let us analyze what you think is the source of happiness. He says, okay. He said, look, examine what you love, what your mind really gets attracted to. She said, okay. Do you not see that the object of your love is the source of your joy? Don't you see when you say, I love this, the very fact that you love something, it means that vastu, that thing, gives me some joy, isn't it? She said, yep, that's true. Okay, so you accept that. Examine, who do you love? This is the important thing. Keep searching for who is the real object of your love. Because once you find that out, that vastu, that object is in fact the source of your joy. Okay? Next C, is, let us look at a married relationship. This is all given in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So he says that suppose there is a husband and wife, and the wife loves the husband, really loves the husband. You ask her, do you love him? She says, yes, he's very dear to me. Out of all the people in this world, my husband is the dearest. Okay. All right. So you want him to be very near you? She says, yes, I want him to be very close to me. I don't want him to disappear somewhere because I would miss him. I want him to be very close to me. All right, good, good. Suppose she grows very hungry and there is nothing in the house for her to eat. Okay? And she has to cook something for so on and so forth. Okay? And he has to maybe bring something for her to eat. Okay? Now, she says to him, please go away and bring something for me. Let's analyze that situation. if she really loved her husband more than her hunger, she would say, do not get away from me. I don't care what happens, I'm hungry or not hungry. I love you so much that I don't want you to be away from me. It's not the case. She says, I don't care where you go and how long you're gone, please bring some food for me. So what that means is that her real love is for the food, not for the husband. And the real love for the food is because I cannot stand hunger. And if I am hungry, then I will not be comfortable. So I am really interested in myself. So Maitreyi said, interesting. I see. So he says, do the viveka at all times to see what masquerades as love and what is the real source of love. Do it all the time. So in chapter 12, so this is just one start of that. But he says in chapter 12, it goes into great detail. There is one particular verse, just some very beautiful commentary. Let me see if I can find it. This is on verse number 6 of this 12th chapter. So he talks here about a love for some object. Like he talks about love for a particular sweet that you are very fond of. Could be ice cream in the Western world or even in India. Here he talks about rasagulla, which is a very popular dessert in India. So now he says, let's analyze that. Do you like rasagulla? And most people will say, yes, I like rasagulla. So when you say that I love rasagulla, that means that it is a source of joy for me. If it is a true source of joy, will you eat it in all conditions? No. Because what if you are sick? Or you've gotten a report that your sugar content in the blood has really shot up. Or you go to a party and there are so many rasagullas there, you can have as many, but you only have 2. After 2, the rasagulla ceases to be a source of joy for you. And if you are sick, that even the one, you cannot even have 1. So it is clear from that the rasagulla is not the source of joy. You are accepting it because it gives you joy in your own heart under certain conditions. So from here we can see that really speaking, I don't love Rasagulla, but I love myself because I want to be happy unconditionally. Rasagulla was just conditional. I don't love my husband unconditionally, but only if he is conducive to me. This is what we have to do. We have to do the analysis in all aspects. So it doesn't mean, Swami Maheshananji points this out very nicely, it doesn't mean that you should become selfish. It doesn't mean that. What do you mean by don't? It doesn't mean that. Of course it doesn't. It mean that you are selfish, because we are born under the samskara. Not born under, but we are used to the following samskara, and everybody says the same thing. It is a very universal appeal. Don't worry about yourself, help others. Be selfless in your approach, isn't it? Even in Aim for Seva, we all say that please help other children, and please give some donation, which means the loss of money at your own self, but somebody else's help. So isn't that all we are saying? That help others, and now you're saying just the opposite, that you have to see to help yourself. Swami Maheshananji points this out very nicely. He says, no, there is a difference. I am not saying that you should become selfish. What I am saying means what Shastra is saying is, know that you are naturally selfish. You are selfish. You don't try to become selfish. Even when you think you are not selfish, you are selfish. So this is what it says, that the self means the Atma, yourself. So, the definition of Atma is Parama Prema Aspadam. This is the Sanskrit word for it. Parama Prema Aspadam. What do you mean by Parama Prema Aspadam? So, Prema means the love. We talked about, you love something. You love Rasagulla, that means it gives you ananda. That's called prema. Prema means love. Aspadam means the locus of your love. I use the word locus instead of object, because ultimately you have to say that the Atma is the locus, which we will say in just one more minute, but it is not an object, so you cannot say it's an object of your love. Aspadam means it is the place where your love stops. This is the very aspect of your love. And then Parama means the one which is unconditional. That means Prema Aspada Swarupa. Because all other things appear to be lovable but only from the standpoint of the self. Very famous, the same dialogue between Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi, the very famous dialogue which says, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Everything appears to be lovable, but only from the standpoint of your own self. So it doesn't mean that you have to become self. You already are selfish. And selfish in a good way, because if you forget about this Brahma, you see where the mistakes are being made, then you will see that Atma and alone is the source of all joy. So this is the method of approaching in Yogananda, which was in chapter 11. And so here in the chapter 12, as you know, the name of chapter 12 is Atmananda. Really, Atma is the one who is the source of the Ananda. Okay? Well, here now some more examples are given. I think we can just do a few more minutes on this, but then we will just summarize this, and we would have done all of that. So for instance, next one is given is the one about the wife loving the husband is 12:7. Chapter 12, verse number 7. Another example given is 12:10. Here is a very current example. He says that if father, and this is very appropriate in this day and age, a father who has a lot of facial hair, and these days the facial hair is very interesting because people don't have lots of hair, but they cut it so that it's very short and very prickly. The mustache, the beard, and so on. My younger son, he has that. My older son doesn't have any facial hair, just like I don't. But my younger one has all this facial hair, mustache. And lots of this is a very good fashion. If you look at the people around, facial hair is very well. Now supposing a father has a young toddler, a soft little girl is his daughter. And I've seen this, my son do the same thing. He would forcibly kiss her. And the child, gets irritated by all the bristling beard and mustache. Okay, and you can see that. I've seen that from my granddaughter. And she says, "No, I don't want you to kiss me." So is this example. What is a beautiful example? The father, you ask the father, "Father, do you love your daughter?" He says, "Oh my gosh, how can you even ask me that question? She is the love of my life. I have so much love for her." Then why do you give her trouble by kissing her with your bristling hair? "Oh, it'll be okay. She's just for a short time." What that means is you don't love the child. You love yourself having the feeling that I now have a wonderful child. Really everything is don't you understand it? If you really love the child, you would not kiss her if you have facial hair. You really love yourself. Here Swami Maheshanji gives a real example. I don't remember which one it is. I think many of you may have even seen this. Apparently in the very early days of United States, I don't know if it was George Washington or one of the early presidents of the country. The story goes that he was being taken in a carriage, horse carriage. So there was a horse carriage and the president was being taken. All of a sudden they came across a marshy situation where some people were struggling to free a pig who had fallen into the marshland. And he was kind of like drowning, and people were trying to save this pig. And so this president got down from, he says, stop, what's happening here? So they say, sir, this pig is in great trouble because it doesn't know how to swim or anything. And once it gets down to it, there's only 2 or 3 people that are trying to do that. So he says, you know what, I'll do it. They took his jacket off and just got into the mud and started helping. And finally they extricated him out of the mud. And he was, of course, he was on his way to the office, but he's got complete mud all over his place. And everybody was so impressed by the president that, my God, what selfless thing that you did. He says, it wasn't a thing of selflessness. When I was passing by and I stopped, I could see the struggle of this animal to even survive. It was not able to breathe properly. And he said, if I had just said, okay, I don't care, let him die, or let's just go on. He says, I will not be able to live with myself. It was for myself that I did that. The same thing is true for many of the cases where you have these social workers who are apparently very selfless. But you know what? Their own conscience tells them that this is the right thing to do. They feel good about it. In that case also, really, it is all the Atma that really makes them feel good. And you don't really do anything bad or good to anyone. You really try to maximize the goodness of your own self. And you are that way. It's not as though you ought to be. This is the point that Swami Maheshanji made. I think it's an excellent point. He says, no, I'm not asking you to become selfish. Be aware of the fact that you are naturally self-oriented. And you think that I love others, but you don't. Discover the Atma in the process of doing this viveka and vichara. See who the real person is behind all this. And so there's some more examples. Let's see, 907, I can do a few more. Swami Maheshananji says, and I think Swami, I don't know whether it was Swami Maheshananji's commentary or the Panchadashikara himself. He says, suppose you have a diamond, and it's a very precious diamond. And you know what a diamond is? The diamond is considered to be the hardest stone in existence, or nearly the hardest. Nothing scratches it. Nothing scratches it. But you know what you do? You put the diamond in the softest cloth that you can find in a nice little box, and you open the box, and all the fabric there is so soft. So you ask somebody, why are you putting softness of such a soft box around the very hard diamond, which is never going to be scratched? Even if you let it roll on the ground, nothing is going to scratch it. No, I think that it gives you the satisfaction. You are the owner of the diamond. And you don't want the diamond to be feeling scratched. Hey, it's not going to be scratched, doesn't matter, but I don't feel good about it. It's all up for yourself. Then, since we are on the subject of a diamond, then there's this, you can envision the following story. You and your wife, if you are a man, or if you're a woman, you and your husband or friend or whoever, they're both going somewhere in some place to, supposing you are vacationing on a beach somewhere. And so these two robber-like people come up to and say, "Lady, give me this diamond ring." She says, no, I cannot give you this. This is very dear to me. I love this diamond. Give it to me right now. And he takes his gun out. And he says, I'm going to count 10. If you don't give me this diamond, take it off of your finger. And I'm counting 10. If you don't give me, I'm going to shoot you. So her husband says, dear, come on, just give it to him. Don't worry about it. And she somehow, very reluctantly, gives it to him. So here's this diamond, who she was so in love with. We have a friend, we have a local friend. We make a lot of fun of her. So she has this very big diamond, I don't know how many carats or something. And she's always looking at this herself. Even in some kind of a social get-together, you will see that this woman, and she would show this to people, sometimes touch it and so on. She wants you to know that this is my prized possession. So similarly, this woman had this love for this diamond, but the diamond had to be given up because she has greater love for herself. So really the most important thing is the love of the Atma. That's why it is called Parama Premas Aspadam. So discover that. Don't be that, but discover the fact that what is the true nature of where the love is. Atma is the Swarupa of yourself, and that is where the love is. There are a lot of other examples on, giving Naivedyam. You go to a Ganesha temple and you do a complete Shodasha Puja. And one of them is to give the Naivedyam, where you have to give, you invoke a particular devata to come and grace you, and then you have to give them the food, Naivedyam. And so somebody would say, why are you giving the Naivedyam to them? No, because the devata is very hungry, so it has to be given. No. Because you will feel so incomplete that I did the puja and I did not even give the Naivedyam. It is on for your own satisfaction. Oh, many beautiful examples. So here's the crux of the whole thing. This is called upasamhara. For a long time, I have the firm samskara that I am doing it for others. In fact, it is due to ignorance that you have a desire to do something else. Ajnanam, kamana, karma. Jnanam, kamana, karma. This is what Adi Shankara points out again and again. This is where the pravritti and nivritti, doing something and withdrawing something, all does. This is my samskara. And this samskara makes you just like a functioning human being. I want to be a good human being. And because I want to help others and doing all this and so on, you have to start a new samskara. And that is, no matter what I'm doing, ultimately it is for my Atma. It's not as I should or should not, but this is what I am. I should be aware of that. And if I help others, ultimately it is for my own satisfaction. So the ultimate source of joy is nothing but the same Atma for everyone. This is the Viveka and Vichara, where you say, finally, my gosh, I don't need anything else. I am in fact the source of my own joy. And so you don't segment these three things separately. I am the source of Sat, I am the source of Chit, I am the source of Ananda. Ananda is, Atma is all three, all one. Sat Chit Swarupaha, Ananda Swarupaha. So this samskara, this anusandhanam of this samskara has to be developed slowly. Therefore, Vidyaranya points out that if you want to really get started in understanding Ananda, this is what you need to do. Start observing how you behave, how you deal with the world. Why do you deal with the world? What is the real objective of it? And you'll come to the conclusion that it is really Paramatma. In fact, this is the other part of it that I don't know whether we will do it soon, that when you say the Atma, it is really Paramatma, Ishvara, who just is your own Antaryami. And so in some way you can say that you don't even realize that your love for Paramatma is there. You don't have to start a love for Ishvara. It is already there, you just don't recognize it. Okay, so with that I close the class today. We'll see where to go from here. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Good to see you all. Wonderful. Okay, I don't see any other questions, and any questions actually. So with that, I take your leave, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Hari